was not in the fighting. By the time I got there, the fighting was over, but I was helping the refugees across the border, you know, from Hungary into Austria. And then I helped them resettle in North Carolina. Now, most of the Hungarians had relatives in Cleveland, McKeesport, Pennsylvania. The ones who didn't wound up in places like North Carolina, and that's where I fit in, was able to do a little good for the world.
So you were a newspaper reporter then, but also you covered the Olympic Games, Helsinki, and that was in the 50s. Was that newspaper also?
Oh, yeah. Strictly, I didn't see. I thought if you had a Southern accent, it was like
to be in print.
Yeah.
That's what I thought, too.
One day it was like being black and expecting to become president. You understand?
Oh, yeah, never happened. Never happened.
When I got to New York, I think with a Southern accent, I got no chance of getting into broadcasting, but fortunately I was wrong.
You know, because being from the West Texas, southeastern New Mexico area, I mean, Barry, if you could hear my first air check that I made in radio school, oh my goodness, it's like a disaster, you know, and you probably felt the same way, but I couldn't go to print because I didn't know how to spell, so see, I had to try to drop the accent and fake it out as much as possible. But also I want to tell the listener that every time Barry, you know, he goes to Helsinki, he goes to Hungary, he's just got this thing like there's gum on the bottom of your shoe and you pick up all these languages.
Well, you know,
you're a magnet.
Before we move on, you know who else couldn't spell? Remember General Westmoreland in Vietnam? He was a terrible speller, but the way he overcame it, he was writing, he had to write a piece for English when he was in West Point. And what he did, he wrote about two country boys who didn't speak good English. And so the misspellings were considered brilliant dialect, you understand?
You know, not that I'm into this, and I'm not sure if you are either. You know, I try to stay away from Facebook, Twitter, and all that, and I don't even text. But for you and I, well, for me, you know, if you couldn't spell, and like Westmoreland, texting would be great because, you know, they don't spell anything. You know, Barry Farber would be R.R. Farb or something like that, you know what I mean?
Well, you know, I have a grandson, and I sometimes ask people in the family, can you guess how old Jeremy was when he was able to perform something technological that was beyond me, that I couldn't do? Nobody believes it. The answer is 2. When Jeremy was 2 and could only speak a little, he knew how to put a video in and turn it on. And I didn't.
And when he was 3, he knew how to do TiVo, probably.
Well, he's today 16, and he and my 10-year-old nephew Twitter each other.
Oh, boy,
either Twitter or text, I don't know the difference.
Well, you and I, you know, being partners here at CRN, they are constantly after me, you know, for Twitter and Facebook and do this, and I do have a blog. Have you got a blog here yet?
Not exactly. I don't have one, but I write a column weekly for WorldNet Daily.
WorldNet Daily, absolutely, yeah. And they gave you a great congratulations for your nomination here for the National Radio Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Now, radio, just in case people have been, you know, asleep somewhere, your radio career, you know, you didn't start, see, I started out in you know, like Lubbock, Texas, Morton, Texas, you know, little towns, and you start out in, let's see, New York, what city was it in New York
New
State?
York City, 50,000 watts, but when you understand why, it becomes a little bit less triumphal. In those days, music had a stranglehold on the major stage. There was some little talk, but like, you know, like after midnight here and there. And then came the Payola scandal in 1959.
And it
turns out that all those top 40 records, the companies were paying the disc jockeys drugs, sex, and cash. And when the FCC heard about this and when Congress heard about this, they really got their tail over the dashboard. And
so
they had all...
The two big ones, I know Dick Clark actually was involved in it, and Alan Freed.
Oh, right? Yeah, Alan Freed was.
Was there another guy in New York that really got the hammer on that, too? I'm trying to think.
I forget the names. It's a little fuzzy now, but the point is, stations had promised to do X percentage public service and X percentage education and talk, and they didn't. All they did was have a turntable and a lawyer. They didn't do any of the thing they promised to do for their license, so they quickly snapped back and started living up to what they had promised. So they reached around for anybody who could complete an English sentence without egregious error, and I was right there.
Was Egregious Error the name of your producer?
Not a bad idea. If I ever fictionalize it, it's going to be.
There you go. But so that's New York, and that was, what'd you say, WOR?
1960. 1960.
No. Yeah, and that was WNBC, right?
No, WINS.
Okay, and that was called Barry Farber's Wins Open Mic, right?
Yeah, they didn't want to name it the Barry Farber Show because they wanted to see if my southern accent would fly, and if it didn't, then it would be somebody else's open mic the next week, you know.
All right, so then after that came, is that WOR?
After that, WOR, that was the talk station, and that was always talk and always led the pack. It didn't always lead the pack in mass ratings, but, you know, when the New York Times was king, they didn't care about circulation. The Daily News, with those axe murders on page 1, they always sold more copies, but the New York Times was the paper that the Kremlin wanted 6 copies of every morning on the Soviet leader's desk, you understand?
Yeah. So, and as I understand, that show was so popular that people said you should run for Congress.
Well, right. Well, I have no apology for that. You know, I don't know if you ever thought of this, Chuck, but we and politicians have a lot in common. We both have constituencies, as do not change every time the legislature meets. We both have people who depend on us, and we're the ones they come to. We're the ones they come to when the government fails them.
And you pay attention to what the people are thinking, you know?
Absolutely. No, I think more. I think there was a lot of my colleagues, they ridiculed me when I ran for Congress. By the way, it was a district 80% Democratic. I was the Republican, but the Democrat only won by 52%, so we weren't exactly wiped out by the result. But I think more people, I think our business is the best possible training for politics.
Oh, and a lot of them...
In those days, everybody was a lawyer.
And a lot of them are following what you say right now, Barry. We're coming up on a break. Also, Barry ran for mayor of New York City, and I think that was 1977. That's your loss, New York. We're going to continue in just a moment with Barry Farber. He's the host of the longest-running talk show on radio today. He's also right here, CRN, Digital Talk. We'll be right back.